race fans for the weekend at the Superloop Adelaide 500. 17 National Motocross Championships she's won, the most successful female racer on two wheels. She started her career, Andy Jones, alongside me at age 8 on a Honda XR50 and won on debut in a little pee-wee class at Perris Auto Raceway in California. How good?
Such a cool story, and thanks for letting me come and stand beside you here, Nolts, and call these incredible category. How good was that? With age comes a cage. And when you're 8 years of age, riding a pee-wee around, I think the last thing you're thinking about is ending up in this position later on in life.
She races absolutely anything over there in California. She's right in the hotbed of where off-road racing is. Canyon Lake's about an hour and a half south of Los Angeles. She was born and raised in Riverside, California, but races UTV. She's back on a bike. She's an off-road buggy. She's in anything every day of the week. And a last-minute call-up to join the Boost Mobile Super Truck Series here at the Superloop Adelaide 500. We saw him out earlier today. It's an Australia versus USA series this year. This counts towards the overall World Championship that will take in rounds in North America. We'll have 3 of them as part of the tour in Australia this year. But great to have them back at their Australian birthplace here on the streets of Adelaide. Feels like yesterday, but that was 6 years ago.
Yeah, and they've really been embraced by the Australian crowds, haven't they, Matt? Everybody flocks to the walls and the stands when these cars fire up or these trucks fire up. That's for sure. It's interesting listening to Sarah talk there about, you know, her dirt track escapades as a younger girl, racing around and then firing herself into one of these trucks on a street circuit. Talking to some of the driver group this morning, I went over there and they said it's this really weird balance between what you should do on a stadium super truck on the dirt versus what you need to do when you come onto a street circuit like this, and the harmony is somewhere in the middle, and it's why we see people like Sarah Price going so well, but the likes of Paul Morris also changing his driving style. And right back 6 years ago when they originally came out, there was this speedway style. The drivers were all trying to lock the rears to get the cars to turn, and now they're all using that handbrake as a bit of as we heard Shay Davies talk about, as a bit of an instrument and a tool to be able to turn the car. But one thing's for sure, they're all going faster. They're all getting a whole heap more hang time than they used to, and we love it.
This category has just taken off literally over the years. Started back in 2013 at the University of Phoenix Stadium, and since then has done well over 100 rounds of racing across North America, into Canada, into the race in China, and so many Australian tracks. Of course, they'll be doing 8 events here this year. We're going to places like Tasmania, which is going to be gnarly to say the least. We'll take a look inside Robbie Gordon's cockpit right now as he's heading down towards turn number 9. You've got 2 levers. He'll grab the gear lever here. There he goes, and grabs what we call the fun lever. You can use that to adjust. That's what we call the Andy Jones lever down at turn number 9, just to settle the car down from any kind of understeer through the turns. And we know Gordon is the king of the fun lever.
It's literally a handbrake, Matt, and it's connected to the rear of the car, so it's a bit of a speedway, a WRC style. Wow, look at the moment that Robbie's having there. And the other really interesting bit to this is that lever that's at the front there that you can see Robbie just leans over right now, and he just pulls it on nice and gently. It's hydraulic, and what he'll be doing is trying to just lock the rears enough that you end up with the back of the car or the truck sliding, and it slides around and tries to help him turn. The bit that was really interesting for me when I spoke to the driver group was that the steering ratio, as big as these trucks are, is 1-to-1. And what that means is, if you have a look at his hands inside the cabin here, very little movement at the steering wheel does a lot at the wheel. And you've got to be really careful driving them. I spoke to Paul Morris, he said when you land off those jumps, if you overcorrect, you end up with this big slide happening for very small amounts of movement at the steering wheel. Now, when you're the driver, you don't want that happening. Look at that slide that Robbie's got going on there. It's all controlled. He practices that. But when you're new to the category, the last thing you want to do is land with the smallest amount of opposite lock-on, because we see this big jacking going on, and the likes of Robbie Gordon, who's been in here, geez, it looks like he's having a sleep there at the steering wheel. I can guarantee you he's not. He's looking down for something. But when you're new to the category, the last thing you want to do is land whole heap of handfuls of lock at the steering wheel, because you're going to end up in the fence.
Makes it look easy. You watch from the outside, we're watching him inside the cockpit. He makes it look so easy. 2-time champion in the category. He's driven everything there is to race in North America, from trophy trucks to Indy cars to NASCARs and even some stage wins at Dakar, but this has been his baby since 2013. It was modelled off of the Mickey Thompson series that ran many, many years ago, and has had some great drivers behind the wheel. He loves the competition, even at 52 years of age.
Really cool to see the truck here biking, as Paul Morris coined the term, so getting it up off that left front wheel. It's, for me, these trucks are really technical, Matt. I went and stuck my head under one, and a couple of things I noticed, but they actually run a twin spring all around in some of the trucks, and that's some technology that was used and is now not allowed in supercars. And what that means is there's two spring rates in the front and the rear of this car, and what it allows the driver to do is to be able to have a really stiff spring rate on the inside to try and keep that wheel down and keep the truck turning, but then also a really soft rate on the rear, so when they get on the gas, the thing just hooks up like it does, and that's why we're seeing it pick that up inside wheel up. It doesn't need the inside one to be touching the ground for them to turn, and from a visual point of view, they look awesome.
It's crazy. It just doesn't look right, does it, when you see him torque wheeling, is the term they use for it. You see him stand up and dance through the corners like that. It just doesn't look right, but it's how these things are designed to run.
And particularly when you see how flat the differential and the axle is in the back of the car, and the twist is actually coming through the center of the truck. So there's a lot going on, and mark my words, there's a lot of technology in these trucks. They are not as simple as they look when you stick the camera in the cabin there.
So if you're wondering why we've got a certain amount of vehicles in the pits right now, we split the field into two groups for practice, same as we saw this morning. There was going to be determination from USAC's Jason Smith on whether the primary drivers or the more experienced drivers would get more track time in the second session. We try to split it up to give the rookie racers a bit more track time to themselves before they get thrown in amongst the crowd, as they say in the classics. So at the moment, you got Brabham, Gordon, Price, as Toby Price ahead of Sarah Price, Sean Richardson and Bill Hines, who's yet to complete a lap. But we're still waiting for the return of Matt Mingay. That's the big story we'll talk about when the Hot Wheels Castrol entry comes out. His first race in nearly 3 years. Paul Wheel returns behind the wheel of a stadium truck. There you go. Hang on a minute. Wheels never raced a stadium truck. Yeah, he did. Back in the 90s. At some dirt tracks around here in Australia. Different kind of stadium trucks, incidentally. Greg Gardner is here. Luke Vanner makes his debut. He's raced at Toyota 86. And now he's jumping behind the wheel of a super truck. Shay Davies, who we just saw in the Darwin Bet Easy Triple Crown sponsored truck in the pits, and Paul Morris will be out in the next session.
Shay Davies coming from Dunlop Super 2, Virgin Australia Supercars and some Porsche Carrera Cup in the past. Puts his bum into one of these stadium super trucks, so it is worlds apart for him. But Paul Wheel that you mentioned, you're right, he cut his teeth very early on before joining the Supercar series in some stadium super trucks, albeit very different to these ones, but similar concept. And I caught up with Wheelie this morning and quizzed him. He was putting a yellow visor on his helmet for some reason. I said, Paul, does it look like it's going to rain today or something? He goes, no, I don't actually know why I'm doing this, but I'm giving it a go anyway. So he's having a good time, and it's great to have Paul Wheel back on the circus that we love, motorsport, and great to see him in one of these trucks.
Now, Toby Price on the replay here. That's a downhill section. It's the truck behind, trying to pick up who that was. It was Sarah Price, who's shadowing her namesake just ahead. And this might be part two for the Californian, locking up the VP Racing Fuels entry at the top of the hairpin. Last time she raced in Australia was the Gold Coast. She had a brake failure coming down the back straight and took out her teammate deliberately to wipe off the speed. Her teammate that day was Paul Morris. That was the last time we saw the lady from California behind the wheel of a super truck. But at the moment, she sits in fourth position and doing a great job. It must be said, too, as the more experienced guys come out onto the circuit now in the second part of this practice session. Here is Paul Wheel, the Redback Radiators PWR Performance Products entry, heading down towards turn 9. Isn't that a great shot? That is a cool spot to just watch as a spectator behind that camera point. I know because I've done it.
Agreed. And from the driver's seat, it is a really cool part of the...
I bet it is.
Really, really cool part of the circuit to be able to get through.
You just have to one-up me, don't you, every time?
No, I'm just giving different perspective, Nolts, you know that. It's just a different perspective, and when you come out the other side of it and you haven't ended up in the fence, it feels even better.
Do you hold your breath? Did you hold your breath going through every time?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, because it's one of those, just so much respect is needed at turn 8 here, and even though you're trying to push the envelope every single lap, and these guys and girls will be in these super trucks, you still give it that little bit of respect, because you know that if you make a mistake, it's going to be a big mistake. Wow! Shay Davies landing on the front two wheels there. And there's a lot in that, Matt, chatting to... So for Shay Davies, can't just come and jump into these trucks and have a run around. He went and spent a day out at Norwell with Paul Morris, did some training. You've got to be able to pass and understand how the trucks fly and come off those ramps. Nowhere near as simple as they make it look. You've got to use the throttle when you land, and momentum is king. You've got to commit with enough speed on so that the truck flies and comes down nice and gently. If you don't have enough speed and it lands really aggressively and hard and you're on the throttle, then there's a high chance you're going to break an axle in the back of these cars because they twist and load up so hard. So we see these brilliant shots and images, but it's not that simple, and there's a lot going on from within the cabin.
So you aim to land on the rear wheels or front wheels and not belly down. That's where you start seeing damage, and not just the trucks. These trucks are very robust and strong, but you start doing personal damage to yourself. We saw it at Glen Helen Raceway, a very historical motocross track in California a couple of years ago, where we really were driving on a track that wasn't designed for these, but the landings were so hard, we started to see damage to these cars. They've got their limits. Now tested that day in California. Here's the slow-mo shot of our Dakar legend, Toby Price, down the bottom of turn 9. I love the livery on the side. How good's the cartoon graphic? And it's great to have Toby Price in this field. He's going to do as many rounds as he can in this series this year.
So speaking of trucks with limits, surely this guy has no limits. When you've done what he's done and you've broken the bones that he's broken and strapped himself back on a bike and being able to win the Dakar, no limits for this guy. And how cool is that cartoon graphic to represent the man that's at the wheel of that stadium super truck.
Decided to jump out and have a chat to Sarah Price now. After the session, he runs in third position, headed by Matt Brabham, who needed 4 laps to go 1:44.8. Now, this is only practice. We qualify again tomorrow, but there is a shootout for this weekend's event as well. So they'll have a 1-lap shootout to set the grid. We then flip around the order. It's an inversion from qualifying, and same for the racers. He or she with the most amount of points will go to the back of the field. So that's what makes this so cool to watch, because more often than not, the faster guys and girls are coming from the back row of the field.
And the short of all of that, Notes, this category is huge on entertainment. So they don't mind spicing it up. They don't mind mixing it up. We have a couple of competition cautions as well to bunch the field up. And we are all about entertainment and excitement, and love this category.
Here's Greg Gartner in the bottom of the shot here. The Fuchs R&J batteries entry, the Ironman 4x4 livery in front of Paul Will. So Gartner has had a lot of experience in trophy truck racing in the Australian Off-Road Championship. He's pretty familiar with a super truck as well. We didn't see him at all last year in the World Championship. He decided to sit it out, but this year will attack the entire series, and maybe, just maybe, will come across and run a few of the American rounds this year. And he'll be a great addition to the World Championship over there in the States.
Matt Mingay with a little bit of lock-up. It looked like some smoke coming off that tyre before he even took off on the ramp, and then landing with some brake on. That continued to lock that tyre. Interesting to note, 2 sets of tyres are available for you over the weekend for every single competitor. Given that they're a radial, as they wear out, they actually get a little bit faster. So the trucks move around less on the blocks and the radial tyre. So as it becomes, let's call it a semi-slick, they grip up a little bit more, they handle a little bit nicer. And for us, that means better racing as the weekend goes on.
And particularly in Perth a couple of years back, where that track's notorious for being abrasive. These tyres got better as the race went on. These Toyota tyres are built to stand this kind of racing, both on asphalt and on dirt racing. And how exciting is it to see the Hot Wheels Castrol number 2 back on the circuit. 2017 in race 2 at the Belle Isle Grand Prix in Detroit. We nearly lost this guy. I'm talking Matt Mingay. We didn't think he'd get back behind the wheel of a race car. Well, he's back today. And it's the old Matt Mingay we all know and remember. And he is so excited to be back behind the wheel after that sickening crash on the streets of Detroit.
The mental capacity that Matt Mingay has shown to not only get himself fit and healthy and well and back into the right state of mind off the back of that accident that was absolutely brutal. Matt did a lot of facial damage to Matty, and he's one of the stars of the show. He puts on a huge show at a lot of supercars events with his stunt team. But if there was ever a category where Matt Mingay should be at the wheel of a truck sponsored by Hot Wheels, this is it. This is his platform. And I can't help but feel like it ignites the 8-year-old kid in me when I used to play with my Hot Wheels cars and jump them over everything. Matty Mingay will be out there having a ball.
He had an incident just where we were at the top of the hairpin back in 2017 where he got up on top of the curb, it broke a wheel, then went for these series of barrel rolls into the grass. He walked out, and ever the showman took a bow in front of the very vocal crowd here at the Adelaide Street Circuit. But just so happy to see this guy back behind the wheel of a super truck. He's been out still doing stunt days at motorsport events around the country, but check this out, 670 individual performances he's done since he returned back in 2018.
That's massive, absolutely massive, and that's what I was alluding to before, Matt, was just how hard-working Matt Mingay is, and the entertainment that he provides that we don't always see on the coverage is absolutely phenomenal, both on a bike, in the drift utes that he has, all very proudly supported by Hot Wheels. So it's a great story. It's great to have him back out there in Stadium Super Truck.
And very much a last-minute call. A big thanks to Motorsport Australia, CAMS as they were formerly known as, for ticking the boxes and allowing Mingay to be back behind the wheel as Paul Wheel goes around the outside. That's a different way of doing it. Down at turn number 9 for the Redback Radiators entry. And another story we should talk about. Remember, Paul Wheel had a sickening crash at Bathurst years ago where he was centre punched during practice on Friday. Hasn't raced competitively since then. He's been in the Australian Safari once, but this is his first real run in anger in over a decade.
Yeah, and it's great to have him back. He's a real character, Paul Wheel. Him and his father Keys were very big in the Supercars series quite a few years ago now, running their own operation out of Queensland. They then moved to join forces with Walkinshaw Racing and had a very successful run there with Jason Bright at the wheel, nearly won the Supercars Championship. And now for Paul to be back out there in a PWR-supported Super Truck is huge. PWR, in that little bit of period where Paul stopped racing to now, has become hugely successful. They supply cooling products to NASCAR, Formula One, and they're very much at the forefront and leading technology in the radiator industry, and it's an amazing story. And they're based up on the Gold Coast doing some very, very impressive stuff.
They're even behind the back of these super trucks as well. So the PWR name worldwide known as we take a look at some slow-mo shots through the centre chicane. Greg Gardner, Matt Mingay and Paul Wheel all taking liberties. That's fine for a super truck through here. They've just been told to stay out of the gravel.
No timing loop for the super trucks through turn 2 because we wouldn't be able to keep up with it, would we? We wouldn't be able to police it. So these trucks are meant to do what they're meant to do, and that is belt over things, and they are doing exactly that. And like I said before, this is all about entertainment. Let's not stop the entertainment. How cool are these shots? Geez, that looks like me leaving a dance floor in the early hours of the morning. Look at those wheels going everywhere in all sorts of different directions. That's cool. Cool to see.
So Matty Brabs is happy with his effort in the session here. Two-time and defending Super Truck champion from the States. He raced at Indianapolis at the 100th running in 2016. Was on target for a top 10 result that day. Interesting, Bill Hines all in his casual gear already, so didn't take to the circuit during that second practice session today. They are limited on parts at the moment while they continue to ferry parts out from the North Carolina base in America. So they've been told this weekend, take it easy. The brake pads, these are your only set of brake pads you'll have for the weekend. Same for the tyres. So they need to preserve this. This is the most amount of track time that super trucks get anywhere in the world. Most days, it's a practice session. We go home, we come back Saturday, we race. We go home, come back Sunday, we race. And now, Luke Vanner has made contact with the wall. That's between turn 12 and turn 13, but behind the pit paddock here. And that's actually brought some of the grass onto the track to perhaps give us a bit of a mixture of a course out there now.
Yeah, so really have to be careful when you land off these jumps. very, very direct steering from within the cabin, that 1-to-1 steering ratio. It looks like it's caught Luke Vanna out. He's landed. Now, the fiberglass panel on the front of Luke's truck here, that's got a bit of a bang up and it's hit the wall for sure, but they're pretty light panels. So let's have a look at this. So he's come down on the front of the truck. The wheels are turning to the left pretty hard, trying to catch the slide. Isn't able to catch it. That's a hard lick of the wall, and you can see that Boost Mobile bash plate on the front of the truck there has copped all the impact, but thankfully he was able to fire that truck back up and get it back to the pit lane.
That's not meant to be at the angle that it was designed to be, so the number 38 has taken a lick. Star Electrical, local Adelaide business involved with Luke Vanna's exploits, and there'll be a bit of work for the team to do. Casey Jeffries in the foreground of the shot with the hat and sunglasses walking away. Matt Brabham just coming in to give him some tips, and Bill Hines there as well. But Brabham, quickest after day number 1. The Boost Mobile Super Trucks, 1 second clear of Robbie Gordon. Toby Price, Greg Gartner in 4th, ahead of Shay Davies. Impressive for Davies there in 5th. Morris, Paul Wheel, Mingay, Sarah Price, and Luke Vanna of the top 10 there with Sean Richardson. The last out there, and no start for Bill Hines. That had an issue with the Continental Tyres truck earlier today in the first practice session. The return to the streets of Adelaide since 2018 of the Boost Mobile Super Trucks is led out by Robbie Gordon in this 20-minute practice session. And Andy Jones, it didn't take too long for him to get wild and loose on the streets of Adelaide.
No, and we're very grateful that this man here, Robbie Gordon, he brought these trucks to Australia. He showed us what they could do. We fell in love with them massively, and when you see him driving the wheels off him, look at that slide that he had on the approach to the final corner. Full commitment, released the brake, up over the jump, and just flicked it into the final corner here on the streets of Adelaide.
While that was happening, Gartner has just gone to second at the end of the session. I know it's only practice, but that's encouraging for the Fuchs R&J Batteries team. That was Sarah Price bowling a wide down here at turn number 10 in the VP Racing Fuels entry. Matty Brabham, 4 laps is all he did in that session, and it was good enough to be at the top, even if he did have a wild moment here through the centre chicane.
And he wasn't the only one. There were plenty of trucks that were driving down that path and just missing turn 2 altogether. Is there a turn 2 for Stadium Super Trucks, or do they just go from 1 to 3?
Turn 1.5. This was Gartner. He was one of many to test the limits in this beautiful Fuchs R&J Batteries entry. Paul Morris locking the right front of the Toyo tyres, heading to the top of Wakefield Street, the former Super Truck Series champion. But for Luke Vanna, he would find these 4-ton concrete blocks a bit hard to get past and put damage on the front of his Star Electrical entry. But Matt Brabham, 2-time defending series champion, leads at the end of day number 1. The Boost Mobile Super Trucks on the return here at the Superloop Adelaide 500.